And following the supposition with which he had been born, the supposition that man belongs to the world, Homo sapiens was shaped. The shaping had hardly begun. The shaping had hardly begun, but he was already a singer of songs and a dancer and a painter and a sculptor. The shaping had hardly begun when in one part of the world, one branch of the family of Homo sapiens said, "Stop! Man was not born to be shaped. Man was born to shape. Man was not born to be shaped by the world. He was born to shape the world. Stop! Man was not born to live in the hands of the gods. Man was born to live in his own hands. Stop! We have been testing the wrong supposition. Man doesn't belong to the world. The world belongs to man. It's ours to shape, to conquer, to rule." Homo Magister had been born, and he was born refusing to be shaped any further, refusing to be shaped as man had been shaped from the beginning by belonging to the community of life. He didn't belong to that community. That community belonged to him. He didn't owe his life to it. It owed its life to him. He took that life and made himself the master of it. He took the life of the biological community into his own hands and used it as if it belonged to him. It wasn't a technological advance. It was a rebellion. Homo Magister would no longer be shaped by belonging to the community of life. He would no longer be limited, as all other species are limited by that shaping. He would grow without limit. And to support that growth, he would reshape the biological community into his private food preserve. Food that had once belonged to all, he would seize for himself alone, to be shared with no others. Land that had once supported the life of all, he would seize for himself alone, to be shared with no others. This was his right, if the world belongs to man. And his growth would be voracious, because it was without the limit imposed on all who belonged to the community of life. Homo Magister no longer belonged to that community, and so he grew without limit. And each growth had to be met with an increase in food production. And each increase in food production stimulated a population increase greater than could be supported by that increase in food production. Homo Magister was born with his feet on the path to extinction, because whatever grows without limit necessarily ends by devouring the world. Homo Magister hadn't really escaped the limits imposed on him by the community of life. He was only outrunning them for a little while, for what is only an eye blink of time in the life of our planet, for 10,000 years. The limits caught up with him then. The limits caught up with him now, when Homo Magister is us. Homo Magister doesn't want to hear the story told this way. He never has wanted to hear it told this way. He's heard it before as he carried his rebellion across the face of the earth. He heard it from those he encountered who were still enacting the old story, from people he called savages, because they still belonged to the world, from people he called primitive, because they were not at war with the community around them. They wanted him to understand the story they were enacting. They wanted him to see that it was valuable and important, so he wouldn't make it impossible for them to go on enacting it, so he wouldn't destroy it, so he wouldn't destroy them. They didn't know how to explain it so that Homo Magister would understand, because they were not of Homo Magister themselves. They spoke in poetry, they spoke in songs, they spoke in children's stories. Homo Magister listened sometimes even politely. He didn't understand what they were telling him, of course. He didn't expect to understand anything. What would a savage know that was worth understanding? But some of what they told him was charming and pretty, and he made a note to save those parts. Then he went ahead and destroyed them. They never really had a hope of explaining it because they didn't belong to Homo Magister. They weren't one of his own, hadn't read the right books, hadn't gone to the right schools, hadn't been born and raised to see things from a Homo Magister's point of view, so they didn't know how it had to be explained to him. It really has to be explained to him by one of his own, because he really doesn't want to hear it at all. He doesn't want to look at it. It wouldn't be the first time that Homo Magister hasn't wanted to look at something. He didn't want to look at the observations that didn't fit into Ptolemy's picture of the solar system. He didn't want to look at them because they might mean something. They might mean that man's home was not the center of the universe. Somebody did it anyway. One of his own. Damned Copernicus. Homo Magister didn't want to look at the fossil evidence of ancient man. He didn't want to look at it because it might mean something. It might mean that man hadn't been born an agriculturalist and a civilization builder, direct from the hand of God. Somebody did it anyway. One of his own. Doubly damned Darwin. He doesn't want to look now at the first 3 million years of human life. He doesn't want to look at them because they might mean something. They might mean that man wasn't born to rule the world, that he was born to do something else entirely. Somebody is doing it anyway. One of his own. Triply damned Quinn. He isn't playing fair. He isn't talking to scholars. He's talking to people. Somebody hang him quick.